Here's a guy who is clearly hostile to the idea that people are born gay.
Welcome to the 1 Minute Apologist. Apologetics seeks to give credible answers to curious questions, to give a defense. Are people born gay? To this date, there is no conclusive proof or evidence to show that people are born gay.
Religious conservatives don't like the idea that people are born gay. It would be more consistent with their worldview if people chose to be gay. They understand that ought implies can, and if people cannot change their orientation, then it is senseless to say they ought to change it. The scientific consensus is that a variety of factors impact a person's sexuality. The most recent literature from the APA says that sexual orientation is not a choice that can be changed at will, and that sexual orientation is most likely the result of a complex interaction of environmental, cognitive, and biological factors, is shaped at an early age, and evidence suggests biological, including genetic or inborn hormonal factors, play a significant role in a person's sexuality. So while it is an oversimplification to say that people are born gay, the circumstances of one's birth seem to play a role, and the other relevant variables are largely, if not entirely, outside of one's control. Even if people are not born gay, they don't choose to be gay either. But let's say that people did choose to be gay. So what? Why would that not be a choice that people should be allowed to make?
I know some might say, but Bobby, what about the Simon LeVay study? Those that are familiar with Simon LeVay know that he studied cadavers, and he would study the hypothalamus region of the brain, that part of the brain that is responsible for controlling sexual activity. LeVay discovered that amongst homosexuals and heterosexuals, the brain size differed. However, he would later admit that he wasn't quite certain of the sexual orientation of all the cadavers that he studied.
There are a lot more studies in the biological factors influencing homosexuality than just the LeVay study. All of the studies done have their flaws, but when you take the several studies together, they seem to point to a common conclusion, which is that biology plays at least some role in influencing a person's sexual attractions. This is unlikely to be a coincidence.
Not only that, there is potential for bias, as he was driven to this study after losing his homosexual lover to AIDS.
Well, that's just an ad hominem argument. Even if LeVay had a bias that would make some conclusions more tempting than others, it's the methods he used and the data he collected, not his motivations, that determine how reliable his conclusions are. And again, the scientific consensus that being gay is not a choice does not stand or fall based on this study alone.
Others might contend, well, what about the twins study put out by Bailey and Pillard in 1991? This is a study that would go on to show that it's possible that people are born gay by looking at twins. However, we know that not all twins share the same sexual orientation. There are some who are heterosexual while their sibling is a homosexual. So it is not conclusive.
There were a few studies of that kind, and what they showed was that while twins don't always share a sexuality, if one identical twin was gay, the other identical twin would be gay far more often than was the case with fraternal twins. This shows that genes are not the sole determining factor, but it is strong evidence that they play at least some role. And again, even if the circumstances of one's birth are not what causes homosexuality, that doesn't mean that it's a choice. There are many factors that affect your psychology that are beyond your control. How you were born is not all that matters.
So this begs the question, are people born gay? Well, even thinking about this twin study, I think we need to realize there's a potential for bias because Bailey too was and is a homosexual.
Again, this is an ad hominem. Look at the data and the methods by which it was collected and judge the study based on that. Also, it wasn't just the Bailey study that found that identical twins are more likely to share a sexuality. The Whittam study came to the same conclusion and in fact found an even closer correlation than the Bailey study.
So this being said, I don't think we can know for certain whether or not people are born gay. I'm not sure. Some say yes, others say no. All I know is we are born, each of us, with natural proclivities. And if somebody is born with a natural inclination towards same-sex attraction, it is their responsibility to align to God's word and to trust Him with His word versus making it acceptable if God says it's wrong.
Well, if that's the case, you've just wasted your time making silly arguments against the studies you cited. You don't really care what they say or how accurate their conclusions are. Your position, regardless of why people have the orientation they do, is that if you're only attracted to members of the same sex, you should just force yourself to be celibate. Your message, ultimately, is if you're born gay, tough shit for you, we still don't accept it.